Hello everybody, welcome to the Man Alone solo role-playing YouTube channel. I'm Man Alone, and today we're going to talk about the One Ring Moria, and we're going to talk about it because it has some amazing solo options, and in case you were wondering, the solo options in this are different than some of the solo specifications in Strider mode, which is the popular supplement that is available for the One Ring on Drive-Thru-RPG. And once again, as always, if Free League is watching, we would love a physical version of Strider mode. But this has really surprised me in just how much care, just how much creativity, and really just how much space in this book these solo rules take up. Before I go on, I just want to say that it's over the last 2 years, and it's almost been 2 years that I've been making videos, I've gotten a few comments just that my voice is a bit low. And so after 2 years, I finally was bothered enough to watch a 4-minute video on how to modify my settings, the microphone settings in OBS, which is the studio I use to record this. My intention is or was to make my voice more prominent and more even. And so I don't know if I've achieved that, but my hope is that it did not do the one thing that I didn't want it to do, which is like blow your eardrums. So if this sounds better, if it sounds good, okay, how about this? If it sounds really good or really bad, I want to know about it. I don't really want to, I mean, if you're a sound person, I know how sound people are, you're probably going to, give it a go, a couple paragraphs, but I think as long as it's better than what it was, that would be great. So with my new and improved voice that has a compressor, an expander, a limiter, it's not even me anymore. It's I mean, what's the difference really between me and AI if I've got all these modifications? I guess they're not in me. I'm not like I haven't merged with the audio settings or anything, but I think that it is probably best that my voice is front and center to talk to you about this, because the people have spoken and people want to hear about it. And so where to start? Well, that's an interesting question. On one hand, I would love to start with Strider mode and talk about Strider mode. Review, as I have not done on this channel, what Strider mode is, how it interfaces with the core rulebook for the One Ring, but I'm not sure. I don't know how relevant. I haven't side by side compared them. I know some of the big differences. For instance, the solo rules in Moria are directed toward having a group, an expedition team, whereas Strider mode, as the name implies, is for solo play with one player character. Or do I go back to the core book, or do I even go back further than that? Do I go with the starter set? Because there is lots to learn everywhere along that path. And in fact, I've learned so much from the One Ring. Really, I truly have. One of the biggest things I learned was that when you buy something off of eBay, you want to make sure that you see the whole box, because if you recall, my starter set from here up, like if this was a person from maybe the hips up looking good, then they said it had some slight damage. And then as I turned it, the damage is a little more than slight. And then when I got to the back, I'm hoping that's not pee-pee, but it's possible that it is. So no worries on that. I finally made the switch here. I actually made my own version of the starter set box just to transfer it over because I found a box that looked exactly like it. And I was like, you know what? I'll take the time to convert this box so that it looks, I know it's not perfect, but I think it's like near perfect copy of the starter set box. I mean, are you like, okay, from that distance, like, are you able to tell the difference between these? This took me 2 hours it took me. Wait a minute. Okay, you think it needs just like a little something else? All right, hang on a second. I get it. I know what you mean. A little bit missing right in this area. What do you think about that? Does that work? That's like the more? Okay. All right, let me see if I can find anything else for it. Okay. Now more. Come on. Look. I don't want. All right, fine. This is the last one. Because it's the one I believe in the most. All right, now let's go into the starters. Hold on, please. All right, now, as I was saying, I've learned a lot of lessons from the One Ring, and not only is it about eBay and box sets and all of that, but it's also about printing, because here in my new unsanctioned starter set, I have the Strider mode that I printed on a printer that the only review said I wouldn't. Another said it's definitely worth the price, and the printer was $39. And I just think that I always am going to treasure this because it's literally the worst printing that has happened in the last 20 years. But we can go through the Strider mode here, and if we need to, we can bring up a digital version of it. Like I said, this Strider mode is like an, how shall we say, it's an official supplement. It's not community based. It's a free league supplement, so we could take a look at that if we need to. Now you'll notice too, I did pick up an additional dice set for this. These ones were miraculously included in the starter set and also not waterlogged. And I believe they're not the error editions, because there actually was, for any who were around for this, there was like an error printing of the dice, I think, in the first run of the starter set, and people had to like send in their proof of purchase and get replacement dice. But essentially there are 6 dice, 2d12 and 6d6, and the name of these dice is, the 2d12s are feet, F-E-A-T, not like Harfoot, and then 66 success dice. But I did get this because I know what they're going for here, and they have like a pretty consistent color scheme across all their stuff, which I appreciate. But it just looks like these dice, they look like wounds that have been stitched and are very much still raw or maybe infected. And I'm sorry, I can't not see it. So I was just hoping that these, which I don't remember exactly how much they were, but I'm sure they were affordable. These, let's see if these fare any better. Well, they're definitely more aesthetically pleasing. Interestingly, this is the first time I've ever got like a fresh dice set where I'm like, do I need to clean these dice? Like, do I need to put them through a cycle of the dishwasher? They're fine. It's just that they didn't change the internal like the coloring of the grooves, and so it does look a little bit hard to read. So I think we're gonna have to use both the cyberpunk, I'm going to refer to these as the cyberpunk One Ring dice, as well as the what do we want to call that one? The slicer punk. Although now that I am seeing, I know this is the Gandalf sign, but I'm just going to be honest with you. In my head, this is the Eye of Sauron, and the one is Gandalf. But, and you're lying if you don't agree, that it looks like a half menorah, or I mean a third of a menorah. Though the D12 actually look really nice. So that's a plus. Anyways, not the point. Also included in the starter set is these cards, which I think are crucial. On one side, like in Forbidden Lands, there's different group orientations that have like different roles, and everyone has to do different checks. So if you're doing overland travel, these are really helpful. And then combat is it's a little bit intimidating at first glance. It's not too complicated, but I like anything like this that gives me a visual guide for stuff, so that I don't, you know, when you're just first learning how to play a game, and there's just a lot, it's nice to have anything that makes it even a little bit easier. So Strider mode is a nice size supplement. And how many pages is this total? Yeah. So without the cover and like the refs, it's like 25 pages, which is nice. And I also just have some character sheets printed out. These are the rules that came in the starter set. I usually like to read through these rules that come in starter sets first, because it helps me to sort of like keep up when I go to the core rule book and not feel so overwhelmed. However, I do feel like there's 24 pages in this, and it did some things that were pretty confusing early on. So I'm actually going to, if I reference any of the core, you know, if I try to, and this isn't going to be a video about how to play, but in case I do talk about any of the core rules, I'm probably going to reference the core book for that. And I just want to say this really quick, so that I can sort of hit the quick release or escape button for anyone who's thinking that I am going to show people how to play this. If you watch this, you'll probably learn a bit about the mechanics of the Moria solo supplement, and by extension, how to play them. But this is not a tutorial video, okay? And so if you want to just learn how to play, I'm going to give you a much better recommendation, which is to watch Will at the World's End. And it's not a doomsday cult. I thought the same thing. Will is way better at doing these kind of videos. They're nice and edited and succinct and everything. And so not only does he has a playlist with like 10 to 12 videos on just how to play the One Ring, he has a video on Strider mode, and then 3 or 4 months ago posted the solo mode video here for Moria, and all of it is really good stuff. So if you want, go now, you know, please leave, please stand up in front of everyone and leave. No, it honestly is like, I watched that to learn how to play this. It's just very well made. And then the starter set did come with some pre-gens. They're all hobbits. Again, I wonder about that choice, because it does have a little bit of a limited range of showing off the different features, but it makes sense, because actually the adventure that's included in the starter set was like called the Shire, which I think was a good choice by them, both from like a marketing perspective, right? That's like a lot of people, that's going to be very familiar to them. But then also additionally, there is like it's a contained space. And I think that that is important. And I'm going to talk about the idea of a contained space once we look at Moria a little closer. Anyways, these are some other things that are actually for the Moria supplement. This is like some ally cards. This is your ally roster sheet, which I really dig this. Your roster has like its own skill checks and stuff. And then I also found some really nice supplements. This one is for the combat, sequencing the combat. This one is as well. This one definitely looks like it has more information on it, but I feel like I'm going to be more likely to use this one, at least to have out in front of me during combat. The starter set also then came with a map, and it did not come with this, but this is the GM screen. It's not bad. I will say it does not have combat rules, which is like the big thing that I wish it had. So that's a bit concerning, but it does have some good stuff. We'll probably see that throughout as we're talking through this here. The GM screen also does come with a location Rivendell, which is really nice. I like getting like a little goodie with the GM screen. But then back to the starter set, this is the Shire, this is the initial adventure, and then there's some other adventures as well. And so I will go through this one really quick. I know I said we'll mostly focus on the core book, but there's just a couple things in here that I want to point out just about the One Ring in general. And then from there, I'll talk mostly about Strider mode, still sort of doing an overview, and then we'll look in depth into Moria, and I'll show you what I like about it, and also some of the interesting choices that were made. And there are some interesting choices, and I'm not saying that like, oh, this is a very interesting choice you've made with this, souffle, and it's really bad. These are really interesting choices and some innovations, some solo play innovations that make me very happy. So we'll take a look at those. But first, just a few words from the rules book from the starter set. I'm just going to clean my play area here. All right, major points. Number 1, the Twilight of the Third Age. This is important to know, and I think it is a good thing, a happy thing to know, is that the One Ring is set in the Twilight of the Third Age. So it is between or from The Hobbit up to, and I'm not sure if it includes any of it, but it's basically between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. It's 6 decades. And it's ushered in when Bilbo finds the One Ring to rule them all, and it culminates with the war fought by the Free Peoples against Sauron. Okay, and so this is This is why this is good, and it resolves a major, let's say, turnoff that I have about playing in IPs that are focused specifically on something where there is a strong cultural influence of that time or that group. Okay, so for example, if I was doing a tabletop role-playing game of The Lord of the Rings, which is available, it's 5e, and this is just my preference, but I would find it difficult to assume, for example, the characters like Gandalf, because I would have a lurking anxiety, maybe is not exactly the right word, but I feel like I would have this existing lore in the background of my mind that I would be working overtime to be careful about interrupting or bumping up against, or having a feeling of like, oh, well, that character wouldn't do that, or that character wouldn't die because they do this later, or that doesn't make any sense given what we know about this. And for some people, this is no problem, right? I mean, it's just all about your psychological affinity or relationship with lore. But for me, it's good when it's a familiar setting because I know plenty about it, right? I know about Middle Earth. I know that Tolkien invents all these languages, the ones with like all the like lowercase y's, you know. And I know about Sauron. I know about Gandalf. I know about the hobbits. I know about all this stuff, but I'm not trapped by it. Okay, and this is also I think what appeals to me about Moria more so than Strider mode is that Moria is takes place in Moria, which is a underground dwarven mine colony that is constantly like restructuring itself. Okay. And I think that I've had this increasing desire to play more dungeon crawls, more mega dungeons. And I just want to say that if you are somebody who is struggling to get started with solo play, I would recommend that you consider the following. One of the things, I tried playing Strider mode very early in my solo playing career, if such a thing could be said. Here's the beautiful print of that. And Strider mode is an excellent solo supplement. But I think one of the issues that I had, and it was similar with Starforged after that, is that I was paralyzed by infinity, by the infinite choices, by this idea of like, what next? I can do anything. And therefore, I'm a little bit worried to do anything, which like an unbearable heaviness of choice. And so what I like psychologically about a dungeon, and I could wax philosophical about how a dungeon is really a symbolic externalization of our own sort of basement of ourselves. One thing that is really nice about this is even though this is a massive dungeon, and it is, if you look down here, here's the scale. Each one of these rectangles is 1 mile. So this is 20 miles, 20 miles. This is 40 mile long. And that's not even to account for how wide it is. It's massive. But even so, it is contained. With enough time and sufficient interest, I could explore all of this. And yes, it might reform itself. Things might change. But I am sheltered by the dungeon in a way. Okay, I am limited by a dungeon in a way. And I think a broader lesson, and I've thought about like a video for this for a while, but I'm not sure what else to say besides what I'm saying right now, is that you need freedom to create your own story, but you need limits to know where the sandbox is in which you are to be creative, where you are to build, right? And I think that, yes, technically there is external limits to Middle Earth, but it's big. It's a world, and it's a lot easier for me to deal with a place. And for this reason and many more, Moria has given me a renewed excitement about solo playing the One Ring. And in fact, it was after I did a video a few weeks ago, or it might even be a few months ago, I went over it and I was like, I reviewed this book and I was like, yeah, it looks good, looks cool. And one day I was like, wait a minute, I woke up in like a cold sweat. And I said, did I really just do a video on the solo rules in Moria and not like get absolutely blown away by the fact that you see this S right here? All of this is solo specific supplement. This is 36 pages that's dedicated to solo play in this book. And that's huge. I mean, that is huge. And that is something that I'm so happy that Free League is making such a conscious effort to appeal to solo players. I think it's very wise because, as you know, there are some of us who will only buy a book if it has either explicit solo rules or it makes it very clear that it's going to be solo friendly. And then there's a second, like as you become more of a savvy solo player, you also begin to be able to suss out fake solo rules. Like when a book says, oh yeah, and there's also a solo option. And then you read the solo option and you're like, okay, this isn't really any, like, it'll be like, oh, maybe you could just write out your thoughts and here's an oracle. And if you roll a 1, it's yes, and a 2, and it's not a real solo loadout. Or also, I might say, as for myself, I have grown a little bit exhausted with solo only games, solo games that exist like in a 25-page book that are just like, oh yes, this is a solo only game, because I often feel like I want more, I want all of the other 300 pages before the solo supplement, so that I get to experience the depth of lore and look at maps and backstories and all of that. And so this is really, really exciting to see. And it's also exciting where it got placed. I said I was going to do this quickly, and it's already not working. Okay, back to the starter set rules. The GM is called a lore master, and the player characters are called player heroes. As far as the dice and dice rolling, I think that with the help of the SEAL Team Waffle Alpha community, I have finally had the strength to wean myself off of the idea that this game is some derivation of the Year Zero engine. It's just not. It looks like it at a glance, but it's not. What this game actually is a roll high system with a target number, and instead of D20s, you're using D12s. Okay. And I also wanted to say something else significant just about the D12s that I should have said before. If you are not using these dice, I think I was misleading about this. Usually the idea is that, in most games, if you're going to have any sort of fumble or extreme success outcome, the fumble there, it's going to be 1 in 12, right? Depending if it's roll low or roll high. But in fact, if you're using your own dice, these dice are 1 to 10. And 11 is the Gandalf rune, and 12 is the Eye of Sauron. Okay. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter which one's which if you have the official die here, but if you're using your own die, which most people will be, that's what it would be. It's 1 through 10 and the Gandalf and Eye of Sauron rune. Also in the 6-sided dice, there is an elven symbol. And I think this is something that feels a little bit Year Zero, is like you're looking for, there's some special outcomes proffered if you have more of these elven symbols. There's nothing on the 1. However, the 1 is outlined, where as is the 2 and as is the 3, where the other ones are solid. And I think from a solo standpoint and Oracle standpoint, I would love to get more use out of that. But the biggest thing is that the numbers that are, 1 to 3 that are outlined, or 3 or less, when your character has a weary condition, those count as 0. Okay. I think that is really the best primer that we can make on this, other than your target number is going to vary based on the difficulty of something, but also on your character's capability. Also familiar, Free League standbys is the use of the word manipulation to mean anything that involves persuasion or influencing, which I do not like. But I do think that it is a word that, at least in the US, has a certain connotation. I think in most Western English speaking, manipulate, if you were to say that, is like it's something insidious or deceitful. Unless you're talking about manipulating a screwdriver into or something. But here it has a broader interpretation that I think, and I hope I'm not being ignorant here, but my impression is that it has a more neutral connotation in other languages. Okay. The other thing that Free League does is they say, if for knowledge, they say, hey, if something that the hero is looking for is not hidden or secret, don't even roll. They just know it. And I just really don't like that. And it's the same thing with perception checks. I don't like the fact that they say, hey, don't have him roll for that thing. Just, it's there. If it's there, it's there. And I I just think that there is a time for that. And if that's sort of like what your ideal is, that's good. But I also think that there is a place for that. There is a place for perception checks. There is a place for lore checks and stuff like that. So, and it's just confusing because in another sense, it's like, oh, if the knowledge the heroes are seeking is not hidden or unknown, well, then you don't even have to roll. And it's like, well, yes, of course not, because you just said if it's known. So it's like, oh, if this knowledge is known, do not roll. Okay. And then in terms of the abilities, and really right here, I'm just talking about things that are unique to this game. This video does make an assumption that, like, you know, you are familiar with dice rolling systems and stuff like that. So again, check out that other page that I recommended. I'll link it below for more information regarding actually how to play this game. But additionally, there is no push. I got a little confused about that because from this rules guide, because it does have this section on repeating a roll. And I thought like that was this game's version of pushing a roll. In actuality, this is just referring to the fact that like you can't, let me see how it was said, because I liked it so much. Right. It was esteemed SEAL Team Waffle Alpha member Mick who said, no, all that means is my players can't spam the craft skill to open up the bloody door. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty common as well. And again, for the 6s, there is the little elven symbol and Gandalf rune, Third of Menorah, and the Eye of Sauron. Okay. And degree of success is relevant, and the die rolls are either favored or ill-favored. That's like sort of advantage and disadvantage, but there's a little bit more. And here's where I want to switch just to make all of this a lot easier on everybody to say, obviously, if you're interested in this, if you're 75% interested in playing this game, starter set's a great place to start. And I think I have an older version that was in a flood. So a lot of the errata and stuff like that was corrected. But that being said, let me just show you something else. All right, you've heard of the one ring that rules them all. On rpggeek.com, and I'll put the link down below, is the one cheat sheet to rule them all. This is the second edition cheat sheet. And let me just say the Free League one is the second edition. There is no first edition Free League one. The first edition was actually put out by a company called Cubicle 7, who you may know from, they do the Warhammer TTRPGs now. But this cheat sheet, it has been updated as recently as like 4 or 5 months ago, and it's free, and it is 15 pages long, and they were not messing around. Like, here is both sides of the character sheet, and everything is described. Here's combat, injuries, councils, journeys, dice rolling, fellowship phase, characters and adversaries, eye awareness, which is like the level of the enemy's attention toward the company, which I think is really cool. And that's during the adventuring phase, which those of you who are fans of Forbidden Lands, there is journeying and fellowship and councils. All of those have distinct mechanics. It's not just combat, which as I grow old, long in the tooth, I realize that the more things like that have a mechanic to them, it's almost like the stuff that's normally mechanical in games for good solo play needs to be more narrative based, and the stuff that's usually narrative based in group games needs to be more mechanical. I'm not sure if that's always right, but it feels right, and that's all that matters in this day and age. Look at this character generation sheet, Unreal, a list of treasures and how to generate them, and the precious objects and blessings and famous weapons and armor and enchanted rewards and cursed items, and then every single name for hobbits and the woodmen of the Wilderland and men of Bree. Which is not B-R-E-E, not the cheese. If there is a Men of Brie out there. And then this last one here is like different occupations and useful items and stuff. I think if you just get this and read that over, you're gonna be ready to go. As far as you could probably participate as a player in a group game, and you'd probably be ready to start a solo journey. But essentially, there is a unique system here that has some familiar components, but you need to like let that go a little bit, because otherwise you're going to be like expecting these mechanics to work a certain way, and they don't. This game has its own system. Respect the system. But I think too that it also feels a little bit intimidating on the front end, but the more that I've read about it, I've been like, oh, okay, actually that's pretty cool. That's pretty easy. For instance, like the combat, you know, you have the forward position, open, defensive, rearward. And I'm like, oh Lord, like what do I got to remember all these positions now, but it actually makes sense. Like the forward position, you want to attack. And so you have, you're going to have more of a bonus with your attack, and you're going to be more vulnerable to get hurt. The open position is a sort of a compromise. You know, your attack and defense have evened out. Defensive obviously favors defense, and then rearward is ranged. The character sheets, strength, obvious. Heart is more like empathy, communication. Wits would be cleverness, intelligence. 6 skills under each of them. Those skills themselves kind of have their own thematic categories. Combat proficiencies, war gear, adventure points. Your target number for everything is right here. And I think that the fact that you have certain skills that are favored and those get checked off, and when you have a favored skill, all you're going to do, this is why there's 2 feet dice. Oh, I hate it. I'm sorry. I hate it. I hate the like feet dice. I just think of feet. I can't, and I don't wanna. I hate it. Anyways, if you're doing the foot dice, you're gonna just roll 2 if it's favored and take the better roll. Okay, and I like this because it's just got no pun intended here on Pippin, but the more pips you have, right, the more of these bonus dice you get, and the more you're adding the numbers, right? So yes, you're looking for like elven runes, but you're adding numbers. The additional runes, or the Gandalf rune, that is just going to sort of give you a more profound success, or in the case of the Gandalf rune, it's going to give you an auto success. So there are way better videos on this. Take a look at this, because so much of what is in here, this is probably one of the best things to just have on your desk as you're playing through. But of course, it's, you know, it's not like the reason to buy the starter set, because the starter set has so very much more to offer. Okay. So I think, especially honestly, for the, you know, the price, the relative price of a set of dice versus the starter set. If you look at most, if you're buying new, especially, I think you'll find that the starter set is well worth the price of admission. And remember, if you get it on eBay, make sure you ask, is the starter set okay from the knees down, not just the hips up? Okay. All right, this part isn't scripted. This is so good. This game is so good. Why did all of you let me not? Why did you all make me not play this? This is a good game. You know, I watched a video a couple weeks ago, and it was somebody, you know, one of these usual a video establishing the mono dominance of D&D, and I get it. Like, if you know, I'm no hater. D&D is a good game that's been hyper refined over a long period of time, and if you don't think that there's something great about it that would have such a massive fan base and players who, despite everything, despite all the many reasons why they shouldn't play, they still continue playing. Obviously, it's got something going on. If you don't recognize that, you are intellectually dishonest, okay? That said, this individual is saying, oh, well, what alternatives? The One Ring? There's nothing happening in the time period that the One Ring is set. Okay, I'm sorry. First of all, there's nothing happening. It's a fictional setting. Anything I want to happen can happen. Right now, I just put a mech on the Shire. It is just leveling all of the houses. And Bilbo is sitting with his back towards his circle door going, oh no, oh no, oh no. And then you just hear the mech outside going, zzz, as it's calibrating. And now, boop, it's gone. You see that? I could put anything I want in an imaginary land. So that's ridiculous. But also, the mechanics of this game are excellent. So I have no idea why so many of you prevented me from playing this game for so long. It's not my fault. I tried. You all said no. Well, I'm not listening anymore because it's very good. All right, where was I? Strider mode. All right, so the Strider mode supplement, available on DriveThruRPG, Free League, please make a physical copy of it, is an adaptation that was made by Sean Tompkin and Matt Click. I have a question. Can somebody confirm this for me? Somebody has told me that Sean Tompkin and Matt Click are father and son. Is this true? Please confirm in the comments. So it's very affordable. It's on DriveThru and I think worth the money. And I love this kind of solo supplement. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I have like a little bit of exhaustion about games that are made as solo games on the front end that are not based on an IP. I'm not saying they're bad, so just take a breath. I'm just saying I'm exhausted by them. Like even now when I see these games in my game store, I'm kind of like, no, that's okay. And the reason is because I just wanted more. I wanted like I would read those solo games, and not all of them. Obviously, some of them are awesome, but some of them I'd be like, well, this game is 25 pages. And I think that's cool, but to have a solo game that's well developed, but that also, in addition to the solo rules, I can go and then read this chonker, which is just an absolutely gorgeous physical book. And then having a rule set that is dedicated to solo, and that this is what I love about it. It's like calibrated or it's like retooled to fit solo rules. It's the same thing with the Forbidden Lands one in Book of Beasts that Matt K did. It's like you have this game that's not a solo game, and then somebody comes in and they adapt it. And so they say, all right, well, here's, like I said, here's how this works. Let me bring up the PDF so we could actually see it. Oh yeah, actually, before I get to Strider mode, I just wanted to say I found this thing, which is like the family tree of the Tolkien Legendarium. Just because, you know, it's like been a while since I've read the books, and it's every character, and these colors, I know it looks psychedelic, but they're actually like it's based on, you know, what sort of group this person is or what lineage or whatever. But this is so interesting, and I never knew this before. But if you go all, because you really got to like look closely for this, but if you go all the way down and you look at Smeagol, look at that. Gotcha. Oh, man alone 1, viewer 0. This is how YouTube works, right? All right, I'm sorry. All right, so in Strider mode, I'm sorry, it was just a joke. Couple things that stand out here. That there is these 3 tables: telling table, lore table, fortune and ill fortune tables. Telling table, fine, it's an oracle. I prefer, of course, to use the Fate Mill, but it's a, you know, as far as those kind of yes/no oracles go, it's good, it's solid. The lore table is really good. It's really good. Okay. And then as we go through here, it retools some of the things. The adventuring phase and the fellowship phase are going to get modified. You get a little bit more experience points at the front end. You establish a safe haven so that you can avoid, you know, you have a place that you're not going to get just like, although this would be funny if there was a service where somebody called and said, midday, they said your safe haven's been invaded in the One Ring, and then you go to your boss, you say, Leslie, I have to go. And they said, is everything okay? Is your family okay? Is your wife Gertrude okay? Is your son Marmot doing okay? Is your mistress, whose name is Philomena Diomvirno, is everyone okay? And if you say yes, everyone's fine, my safe haven is no longer safe. Leslie says, say no more, Tom. That would be fun. But here, basically, it's your sanctuary. And the fellowship score, which again, this is the normal score that's going to like represent the bonds of your party. In Strider mode, I think this is re-abstracted well, is that it's more like your the people you serve, the communities to whom you protect or that serve or whatever. Okay. And this is, I think, one of the things that not only makes Strider mode really great, but also is a good ingredient in any solo game, is a like reliable frame. And what I mean by that is not only is it a reliable gameplay cycle, right? That's really good. For instance, Mutant Year Zero, I think, has a good one of like, yes, tons of like wacky, fun stuff is going to happen, but at the end of the day, this is how it's going to go. You are going to go out into the zone. You're going to collect some scrap. You're going to find out some stuff, and then you're going to go back and you're going to make improvements. This is crucial for solo play, but also, I think on the mechanical end, having that gameplay loop or cycle is really important. And then on the narrative end, the patron, I think, is really good at framing. And what I mean by that is like, sometimes you will get this question that pops in your head. It's the most reductive question. It's very important, but it's also like a plague. It is a sort of like parasite, a language parasite. And that question is, wait, what am I doing? Right. And if you let that, it's like a little spore of a thought in your head. And if you let that proliferate, that's when you start getting the hollow heebie-jeebies. The hollow heebie-jeebies are a sickness that can overtake solo players, in which they suddenly feel a wave. It's not even a wave of stuff. It's like there's just a vacuum that opens, or it's dark matter of inspiration that suddenly it's like you've eaten the fruit in the Garden of Eden and suddenly you feel embarrassed or something, or ashamed. And it's not even that. It's like, you're like, wait, why am I doing this? Why am I playing? What am I doing here? I'm sorry, right? And we must not allow the hollow heebie-jeebies to take form. So having these reliable frames, such as the patrons, is a great way to be like, oh, okay, yes, I am. This is who my patron is right now. This is what they stand for. Balin is the one that is featured in Moria, but there's obviously, you could have Bilbo, you can have Gandalf, you can have Tom Bombadil, which I'm sorry, but when you buy a metal miniature directly from the Games Workshop headquarters in Nottingham, you just have to show it off. Although it's not been finished yet, he is working on it. I've got this beautiful cast of Tom Bombadil that we've based here. I actually have all of them, and I was able, when I was in the UK, and for those who don't know, the UK is like the it's the real world Middle Earth, and it has I got this dice tray from a guy on the street, and I was like, is that an official Lord of the Rings thing? And he's, yeah, it's the king. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I didn't know, I'm not sure who that is, but I guess that's what Viggo Mortensen looks like now. But yeah, this is an official Return of the King dice tray I got. It's really loud, so I don't use it. And I feel upset sometimes when I look at it too long, but we're working on this. We got a couple of the miniatures that we'll still paint up here, and maybe we can use those during combat. So they're the telling table, fine. Lore table, fortune, ill fortune tables, awesome. Okay. There has to be a modification of the adventuring phase similar to the Forbidden Land solo setup, because you're just not going to be able to fulfill all of these roles with one person. And so you have to sort of abstract that. And in addition, the fellowship phase, well, the fellowship phase is mostly the same, but combat, they add another stance, which you're like, oh no, another stance, but it's actually really good. It's a skirmish stance, which allows you to kind of both get half the benefits of both like close combat and melee. It allows you to like run up, hit somebody, and then like back up so that you get good attack and defense. The fellowship score can be tested, and that's something that really shines in Moria as well. And I'll talk about that, but man, I lost my spot. Okay. So patron quest. Oh, experience milestones. You could do just 3 skill points, 3 adventure points every time you play. But they also, this is why I've lost my spot, because I'm supposed to be doing this. The milestones, I like how it's broken out here in terms of assigning these after a session. And I really think that this is good. And for those who are my crab Pendragoons, you will earn additional skill points, and then during the Yule phase, the Yule fellowship phase, which is kind of like the winter phase, which I really like, having this time in which the maturity and capability of your character advances. The fortune and ill fortune table, this is going to be, if you roll a Gandalf rune, fortune, the Eye of Sauron, ill fortune. I'm way oversimplifying that, but these are like, I'm pointing to the paper now. What am I doing? These have to do with outside circumstances. So it's like things that are not fully or not at all in your control. Whereas if you get additional successes, right? Like you get these additional elven symbols on your success die, and your stinky feet die are a success, or you hit a Gandalf rune, which is like auto success. You can get these special successes, which rather than being like fortune based, they're directly related to your preparation, your skills, etc. Then there's 3 risk levels that you determine yourself, but I do think there's an opportunity with risk levels to and the Eye of Sauron mechanic to incorporate a role pushing mechanic into the game, but I have to think about that a little bit more. Essentially, the eye mechanic, if you're not familiar with this, is really cool. That it's essentially a threat meter. It's not just a solo play thing, or I mean, it's not even primarily a solo play thing. It's that certain things up how much the eye is sort of watching you, and the higher the eye, the high, and then you have this hunt score based on where you are. If you're in like the Darklands, it's 18 or whatever. When your eye score rises to your threshold of your hunt score, you then have a revelation, which is like something has happened here. You know, essentially they know where you are and they're coming for you, which adds a really nice urgency to it. Here's the telling table. I think you could use pretty much any yes, no oracle you want. But check this out. Here's the lore table. Lore table is broken down into action, aspect, and focus. All right. And so you would roll your feat die here, and you would go, it would basically be a D12 and a D6. The D12s keep sinking to the bottom. You would roll. And so you ask questions that are always formatted so that the yes answer is positive for the telling table. And for this one, you have this open-ended thing, but realize that the answers that you're going to get are broken down into aspect, action, aspect, and focus, which is a really, really good way of thinking of oracle table usage. That's a really good way of doing it. I think a lot of other oracles or generators like this, they're not specific enough about what is the nature of the answers you are getting. Okay. So we would roll, and depending on the outcome of, why not? We'll try it out. Depending, let me get my noise padded thing here so I don't break anyone's eardrums. All right. So we have a 9 and a 3. A 9 on the shoe dice and a 3. So what would that give us here? 9 and 3. Okay. So that would be summon. And I guess we can roll again. 7 and 3. So that would be prevent. Oh no, now I go to aspect. I'm sorry. Summon old. Please be man. Who woke me up? I was sleeping. 6 and 5. Ooh. So that would be summon old path. Very good. And so, yeah, like maybe you're on a major road, it's been blocked, there's enemies ahead, and all of a sudden it's like you see this old abandoned road that's not even wide enough to get a horse-drawn cart through anymore, and you're like, well, why don't we try that one? I think it's a real winner in my book. And then this is the Eye of Mordor, and you can see here that there's this hunt threshold based on where you are, and there's certain things that can modify the threshold, meaning it like makes it easier or harder for you to be the eye to find you. The eye resets each session, but there is mechanics here to determine where your starting point is, so that as you progress, it is going to be more and more easy for the eye to find you, I guess you could say. Revelation episodes. Yeah. So I think that Strider mode is really good. And so the question being, how can Moria, the solo rules in Moria, improve on this? Well, if you're still around, considering we've talked not about the subject of the video and we're an hour in, let's see what the solo rules bring us in Moria. How different could they be? Well, let's just say a lot different. First of all, say goodbye to the Shire. We're going to space. No, I'm just kidding. That's also a good game, Death in Space. Some things are going to look familiar, but there are so very many exciting tweaks to this that, again, I think a lot of people, when they first see it, they're like, well, what? I can't do it. I can't take it anymore. What else now? But once you take some time, you read it, it's 36 pages, you're going to get it. But let's back up just a little bit, right? Because why not? In for a penny, in for a pound. So before we even talk about the solo play section, let's talk a little bit about this book, right? Because there's 188 pages that come before this solo play section. So let's use our nice little ribbon and let's go back to the front and talk about this supplement. Okay, so this is the most recent one for the One Ring. We also have the Ruins of the Lost Realm. That's another set of adventures. Yeah, 3 chapters. It's got Fog over Eriador, A Gathering Storm, and then there's 12 landmarks that are added by that. There is also, and I do not have these on my person, but that is not because I don't have them, but because one of them is lent out to somebody right now who I'm certain Jeff is going to send that back to me. But that one is Tales from the Lone Lands. And this one, besides having the adventures, each of these has like a little something to add to the mechanics or an option. So this one has heroic lineages, and each of them have rumors and old lore. And then, of course, I love that this one adds the prancing pony, which I think is what's the other one? The green door? Is it the green door? The green dragon. Sorry, the green dragon. So that one's nice, and I'm certain that Jeff is gonna, or anybody's gonna bring that back. And then the other one I do not have yet because nobody has it yet, but they did send out the PDF. So Realms of the Three Kings is on its way. I'll take a look at that once we get the physical copy. But yeah, so this is going to focus on the elves, which I understand that some people do like elves, and it's going to probably most of the usage of this is going to be to actually do these adventures, but the bigger schema here is introducing elves more into play. And in fact, there is a section on adding elf lords as an option in solo play. Now, I'm not certain how specific it is about like whether it is for Strider mode or more for Moria. I know that it's coming obviously out after Moria. Let me just check. Yeah, so this is demonstrating a good maturity of the franchise or of the second edition, in that this is, is going to have more about Sauron, who is growing in power. Has, 12 adventures? Is that right? Yeah. 12 sites of interest. Sorry. I was going to say, what is this book? Going to be 600 pages? And then it's going to have Lorien, Rivendell, and Linden. I'm not sure if it's going to be just the Rivendell supplement that comes with the GM guide, or if it's going to be that one expanded or a completely different one. But here in chapter 2, we're going to get more about Sauron, right? And I think that's natural. I always think of, if anyone saw the show Smallville, it was pretty incredible because it was a show about a teenage Superman. And I'm not kidding, until the final season, there was not a lot of Superman. There was no cape or anything like that, which I think would never happen now, because people are like, let me see the thing. I want to see the thing. I know that thing. But yes, if you've been playing in this setting for a while, your group's probably going to want to move things forward, as well as, Sauron's the big bad. You want, that's been working in the background. So as time goes on, you probably want some tools for that. But chapter 3 is going to have the sites of interest, but then it's actually the appendix that has the solo play, but also how to play High Elves. And the reason why High Elves have not been in it is because they're OP. Well, no, it's also because I think they were prominent during the first and the second age, but they are going to be, number one, they have they recover faster. So wounds, they can recover them on their own. And number 2, they get to do 2 actions in combat. So I actually think that it will make sense lore wise, and it will work better mechanically for Strider mode to use a high elf. Just my opinion. Personally, I'm very excited for the map. I think all the maps that have come with all of these supplements are incredible, and like I want to frame all of them and put them all up on the wall. But especially the ones in the Lost Realm, the back, and now this one has like hexes on it, and labels, which I am very excited about, just in terms of I prefer to mark things off on the hex map. But every single I'm almost certain I can confirm this, that there should not be a map missing when anyone returns a book to me. But yeah, in Lost Realm, there's one of these maps. I'm not even kidding. I want to frame every single one of these. They're just beautiful. Like they're, I mean, I'm not too hard to, I have a lot of RPG maps hung up. I just absolutely love them. But these are like on another level. And of course, it uses the very familiar metric of furlongs. If you look at the bottom right there. But it is Moria's map that has something that is, it's more than just eye candy. The map here is fantastic. It's numbered. I'm not sure if you would give this one to your players if you were playing in a group game, but I think it's 1 to 30 actual sites here. And the book does contain ways to emergently generate play. This map is duplicated here, but, and in fact, I'm going to pause a second so I could fully lay this out here just to show you this. The back of this map is, that's where the hotness is. I'm not cool. Why do I say stuff like that? All right. So this is a complete guide to combat. And, you know, not only is it amazing in terms of its illustration, it also has all of the zones marked out for like rearward, defensive, open, forward, and then foes standing back, because the way that it works with the order is like you'll resolve the foes after the enemies, and then there's areas here, or I'm sorry, the foes after the players. Engaged enemies are right here. These are foes standing back. And so I just am amazed. I'm amazed by this just on its own, but then all around it is a comprehensive explanation of a combat round, including one of the things I really love, which is this opening volley, where if you have ranged weapons, somebody could shuck off a bolt during the opening volley. And you would exchange it from any of the enemies and or the players who have that capability. But yeah, this is so nice. I wish my area was just like a little bit bigger. However, I wonder how this would look like on camera. Would this be way too much? Like if it filled up my whole screen? I'm not sure, and probably shouldn't use your time to figure that out. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this page by page. I just want to point out a couple of things here. Let's start at the top. Okay, number one thing that I think is relevant is this line right here. Moria is, I'll zoom in. Sorry, I'm slowly getting my second hand back here, but Moria is staggeringly ancient and complex. The works of making and remaking Dwero is never done. Therefore, this guide focuses on one section of the city's history, the years around 2965, when the Free Peoples risked entering the dreaded mines on expeditions seeking treasure, vengeance, or lost secrets of the dwarves. So right there, we have a lot of important stuff. We know when this is happening, which whatever, but it is extremely complex and the work is never done, which means that we do not have to worry about the layout of this. So emergent play feels okay. Whereas if I was in a place that has very, very defined rooms and locations, then emergent play can be a bit tricky, right? Because you don't want to create a room or a scenario or something that is then going to be superseded, and then you need to retcon that later. You could read the whole timeline here, which is actually a really, really good timeline. But this right here also lets us off the hook. Lore of Moria. Much was lost in Khazad-dûm, not just physical records and annals, but also much secret knowledge perished along with its keepers when Durin's Bane arose. Even things that were once relatively common knowledge, like the location and word of opening of the Holland Gate, have been lost over the centuries. At the same time, the dwarves salvaged a great deal when they fled, and they preserved the lore of their ancestors with great determination, handing secrets down from one dwarf to the next. And dwarves never forget. Much is remembered about Moria in the halls of Erebor and the Blue Mountains, but the lore is fragmented, like a piece of fine stonework riven with deep cracks that must be filled. Okay. I like that this author is just like, I'm going to stunt a little bit here. Missing pieces must be remade, deep cracks must be filled. So player heroes might find lore about locations in Moria from lore masters and patrons, from family secrets jealously held by certain dwarven lineages, through fellowship undertakings, through dwarven strongholds, from records or inscriptions in the ruins itself, or in dreams or ghostly apparitions. So again, now with the lore, we are also kind of let off the hook with lore saying, hey, this is very fragmented. Nobody really knows for sure. And spoiler, if you know about Lord of the Rings, all of this results, well, I guess I'll keep it I'll keep it spoiler free, but not really. Like, the result of all of this is going to be the same eventually, right? If you've ever seen the Titanic, it kind of it's like that, right? And so we already know that, and so we don't have to worry about like linking it with future things. If you're somebody who even cares about this. For some of you right now, you're like, who cares? I get it, but some people do care about that, right? Because this lore is very special to them. It's very important. The campaign focus is, well, there's several ones of them, and depending on which campaign focus you use, you can get a different patron. But this right here, searching for treasure, mithril, vengeance, questing for ring lore, love all of these for solo play. I love all of them for solo play because we don't have to stress about the meta narrative, and not in the ways that I was talking about with the lore. What I'm saying here is that like a game that very much has a narrative happening. Okay. What's that 5e quest that everyone's like, oh yeah, it's a great beginner quest. And then you're like, dude, this is not a good, they remade it. There were two of them, and it was remade into a single thing called Tyranny of Dragons. And I just remember the book's like Great Beginner's Quest. And I'm reading, I'm like, this is not a Great Beginner's Quest. It's this investigation. It's a complex web of things. So if you have something like that, you're going to be spinning and balancing a lot of plates. Whereas if you're like, let's just find treasure, you can do that for 50 sessions. And what's going to happen is, you're slowly there's going to be a meta narrative that emerges, and it's miraculously going to stitch itself together. But also, if it doesn't, who cares? Because you're just looking for treasure or trying to get vengeance. They took your place, right? Or you want ring lore, which you can sort of gradually find along with the treasure. It could be more of a treasure, but the treasure is knowledge, right? And you also have these different orc chiefs here that you can use. The patron for this, for solo play, is probably going to be Balin. And every time I say that, I think of Balin Greyjoy. And so I'm wondering if I'm saying that right now, because Balin Greyjoy is from... anyways. Okay. So otherwise, there's like some different patrons that you could choose here. Love the patrons. Patrons will give you different fellowship bonuses. They're going to give you different advantages. And I think that again is a great ordering principle of the game. Okay. Yes. Into the Long Dark. So this is going to set the tone here and some mechanical differences in terms of its form is going to follow function here because we're underground. It's dark. There is not a lot of consumable things that are plentiful. You can't hunt in Moria. But so there's the party members, we assume that they have enough food and water. You can track that. They give you instructions. You could raise your encumbrance or load score by that. But essentially, the journeying, it's not like the journeying overland, right? I mean, it's different. You're going into these tunnels, and so you do have to set a path, which I really like, and why I think that you should print off a couple copies of this, because you literally will, like, you know, take a pencil, and don't worry, there's no lead in this, but and kind of say, okay, we're gonna go from here to here, and then you can track out the distance of it, and dependent on that distance, you figure out how many marching tests you have to do, how many events you're gonna have along the way, and there's different events here. So all of this stuff is usable in solo play. Some of it is modified, right? Dire portents, orc assaults, the hunt threshold, that is going to be a little bit different as well, right? Because depending on where you were in the overland, it would change up. Let's just briefly look at how it's dealt with here. Okay, so drums in the deep. This section here is for GMs, and it talks about, you know, I think it's actually, I would love for something this concise to be in every book. It's like, here are all the things that can create atmosphere and rising tension. But if you hear drums in Moria, not a good thing. The eye awareness in Moria is going to be dependent on how much noise you make, and if you have encounters, if any of the orcs that you encounter or whatever survive, that will increase the eye. Then there's these tables, dire portents, which is like foreshadowing, orc assault, which is what it sounds like, terrors of the dark, and gosh, is that how you say that? Which it's like each of those tables, normally the lore master would try to figure out which one of those is appropriate. We'll see how that's going to be done in solo play. But there's also this Moria madness, right? Dwarves who have looked into the darkness, I guess, for too long. And especially because you have to understand that Moria to the dwarves is like, it is like they are, this is their home, that it's theirs. And so it's been taken from them. And so there's not only the anger about that, but it's also like the shame of it. And so being in it, it's like a pilgrimage, a dark pilgrimage for them. And so they can have these bouts of Moria madness, of which there is no cure. No, there is a cure. It's just it endows a condition. Okay, so stuff to generate different challenges, random orc band generators, and then this whole section on fell foes, which is like a nice bestiary. This is an amazing supplement. I just got to say, if you have Ruins of the Lost Realm, if you have Tales from the Lone Lands, those are good. Those are campaign guides. This is really set apart. I mean, this is almost like 2.5e. It's just really been sandpapered into something very smooth here. And so, yeah, this is going to give you a bunch of different stat blocks. And yes, Durin's Bane, Balrog. Holy God, 150 endurance. Okay, so yes, this is all just going to be a bestiary. All right, largest section is Mansions of the Dwarves, and it's really the largest section of the book. This is going to be essentially your dungeon guide, right? Your dungeon crawl. There's lots of different entrances. There's different landmarks that are inside of it. And yes, it's going to have maps. It's going to have set encounters and stuff like that. This is true. How much you use this in solo play is up to you, but there are also tools for emergent play. just to give you an idea of how these are laid out, you have basically the rumor, the old lore, which is the common way that any location is laid out in any of these books. You have the different locations. You'll usually have a map beautifully drawn. And then also there's going to be schemes and troubles in many of them. Okay. I also like this differentiation here in which they'll say like whether it's famous or another option is something that's a bit more obscure. And then there's also ones that are like hidden. Great section here on Mithril, which I did not know a lot of this stuff. And another one on magical treasures, which are a big part of the core game as well. But especially here with the focus on treasure. In fact, there is a sheet, which I'll show you. Actually, I could show you that right now simply because it's relevant to group or solo play. There we go. That's the character sheet. Another character sheet. Okay. And this is going to be for your roster. Oh, I love this so much. Can't wait to tell you guys about this. It's so cool. Did I not print one of those out? All right, I'll just show you the PDF. Gosh, it's just so satisfying, right? Because you have, this is a really nice form fillable. I think this one is from Free League's website. But yeah, so for each campaign and the members of it, you have these marvelous artifacts, wondrous items, and do they have blessings on them? And have they been found? I just think it's going to be so satisfying. Like if you're like me, just the idea of the game, if you were to simplify it down in its most basic words, it's like find the shiny thing. That works for me. I'm not that hard to please. And then you also can find famous weapons and armor, which I love, like the idea of building up, you know, the different lore and backstory of those. This is cards to play with your allies. You could have up to 6. I can't wait to tell you about this. And is this not form fillable? I hope there's a form fillable one of this I could find. But this is the ally or mission sheet. Check this out. Fillable journey sheet. So you have your company, and this would be, you know, this is by the way, this is like for Strider mode. I'm fairly certain, but I think it could be used. I mean, I don't think you're going to be using ponies and horses in Moria. But yeah, just like mapping out your journey path. It would be awesome to have this one with like an actual map of Moria. I know that the One Ring is kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky because it's an IP, and it's not just some IP. It's a big IP. And so because of that reason, there's a pretty tight hold around what you can use and what you can say. And for that reason, there is definitely not as much community content. But this is something that I think probably could, if you got permission from Free League to just use the map, and that way you can use one of these sheets. How awesome would it be to have like a pad that you can rip one of these off, and each one has like a different map of Moria, and that could be all the different delves that you've taken. Just me? Oh, also I found this online. It's like a custom sheet. This looks awesome. I definitely am going to use this one. I'll try to put the link below for any of the resources I use, but it's already pretty late. I'll put those in within the next 24 hours. Okay, so patron. Your patron is going to be Balin. And this is actually in the core book. And the fellowship bonus and advantage, which is Balin's Counsel, you can spend fellowship points to make a combat roll favored. Fellowship bonus +1. Those apply and are the same in the Moria supplement. But bringing out the core book allows me to do a live errata, a word I hate because it sounds like I'm about to say erotic. But I mentioned that the other books don't have hex maps. The core book does. And I said that the journey sheet was actually for Strider mode. It's actually in the core book. Shows how much I know. That's because I used it when I was doing Strider mode. So anyways, it still stands that I love hex maps. Yeah, so your patron is going to be Balin himself. And you're going to have a band. Now, before you decide who plays bass, who plays drums, who plays guitar, you are still going to have a player hero. Okay. And that is, I think, what really sets this apart here is that you are going to have your guy. You're going to have your person who is your main squeeze, your player character. And you're going to build them out just like you would anyone else. In solo mode, you have the 15 points to spend rather than 10. Calling, virtue, and fellowship rating. Your fellowship is a score equal to 3+ additional bonuses that you get from virtues, cultural blessings, and your patrons, which will be a +1. Cooperative play doesn't apply to anyone watching this. None of us have friends. And hope and shadow, same thing as in the core. But your hope is, rather than being sort of individualized, your hope is shared by your band of fellows or fellas is, shouldn't fellows be guys? And anyways, so they are not created as standard player characters, and they have this single attribute, readiness, which abstracts a ton of different stats into it to keep it simple. You can have up to 6 of them, right? Starting readiness score of your band is 4, which successful completion of missions, you can award accomplished allies with the hardened status to improve your readiness score. So you should see right now the kind of game that this is. And this is what makes me really excited about it. If you ever played like Darkest Dungeon, a game where part of the game is not just like arming and equipping your player, but it's in fact like choosing who to take with you, because in addition to having this hardened status, which is going to make them better, they can have different blessings. They also can get conditions, and they might need time off, right? If you push them when they are experiencing Moria madness, it might be that it's their last delve, right? And the game depends on that. You are actually going to have allies who do not make it, right? And so right here we can see that there's injuries, different types of fatigue, hunt threshold, eye awareness, perfect, right next to each other, conditions, and the dispositions along the top. This is expertise, maneuver spelled the weird British way, rally, vigilance, and war. And these are used instead of your skills and the combat stuff when you resolve challenges. So when you do a skill roll, right here it says, when rolling for the band, roll 1 feat die and a number of success die equal to the disposition rating. Dispositions are rolled against the band's readiness target number. The default rating for each disposition is 2, but this is modified when you assemble your allies for a mission. So each time you assemble the crew, get the band back together, you're going to have to determine that, so you can see it's like a summation of their overall readiness to get into it. Okay. Readiness is used to calculate your band's default target number, the static difficulty level for all rolls made for the band as a group or for the individual ally. Static. It doesn't change based on if it's 2 of them that are testing something or all of them testing like a reaction. The readiness target number is 20 minus its current value. The starting readiness target number is 16. Okay. Then here are those ally cards, but just because they're going to share these skills and readiness, you're still going to personalize them. You're going to give them gifts and quirks. They can get their own conditions. Yes, some of these are going to be just narrative based, but not conditions, not gifts. Okay. And this is an opportunity to put together a team that, depending on the mission that you map out, you know, is this a mission that's going to have water? Is this a mission that's going to have places that are going to require some sort of like construction or something, or demolition or something? This is how you're going to make the decision based on who they are as allies, but who they are, it's summarized so that you're not going to be sitting there choosing full, rosters of player characters, because a lot of it is going to be pulled together in their group score. And then also we have these callings, right? The table below lists the available callings and their associated features. It's going to have disposition, focus, favored skills, and the shadow path. And this is like if you fail to resist the influence, right? So for instance, one of the callings is Pathfinders. Their disposition is maneuver. Their favored skills, you get to choose 2 of them. And then they have this thing of lure of secrets. And that's how things can get kind of frustrating, right? Which is we need frustrators as solo players. We need things set up that if we don't manage our time and our choices right, they're going to frustrate our objectives. That's what makes it fun. We don't just want to be like on a people mover at an airport and go from beginning to end. All right. Again, I should point this out again. Has a section here on Strider mode. Solo play within Moria is complementary to Strider mode, a supplement for the One Ring that offers rules and tools for solo play, including expanded events for overland travel. But basically, it says you can use Strider mode, but really it's that that's if you go out of Moria, if your campaign takes you out of there. But Strider mode is not required to play a solo campaign in Moria. So if you're not familiar with Strider mode, if you don't have it, if you don't want it, you can not get it to play this. You just get this book. But if you wanted to explore Moria as a lone hero, I don't know why. Maybe you're just like, that's your personality. You're like, I don't need anybody. It's like, all right, dude, go ahead. Big place though. It says here, following different paths. If you prefer, you can choose from the shared callings for your band and select a standard calling for your player hero, a leader whose purpose is at odds with their followers can make for dramatic stories. Absolutely, right? Think about like so many sci-fi stories where there's people going on a mission and they think it's for one reason, and at the last minute they find out the person that led them there was really just working for some corporation that didn't care about these people at all, and they knew that it was a fatal mission. There's rules for then gathering allies. Look at this. Ooh, look at this. Look at how many different options we can have here to put together these allies, and each of them is just going to have just enough to make them their own person. We got to name them, planning a mission, setting the objective. All of this is going to keep it's such it's just going to give us so much structure and focus for a solo session, which is really what I've just been looking for in a dungeon crawl. That's really what I've been looking for. Yeah, so instructions on how to roll separately for your player hero and the band. Yeah, so I don't, I mean, out of respect for Free League, I don't want to give away the whole document here, but let's just talk. I'll just talk about some of the other features that really stand out and then give my overall impression of this. And then I leave the last part to you, which is, do you want to see me play this? And you got to mean it. Don't tell me you want to see it if you don't actually. Don't tell me you want to see it if you just think it would be cool to maybe have a video out there. Like, I don't want to watch it, but I just want to know, man alone, that like you've made a video and it's there. Fine. All right. Other awesome things. Let me just say the core book, I don't have the feeling that to play this, you're going to have to be like referencing back and forth, but there is, I think, something to be gained from if you want to really dedicate yourself to a campaign in Moria. There are a lot of similar options available in the core book that can, if you're rolling on the tables in Moria and they get a little bit tired, you can look back to the core book for additional ideas. For instance, like Revelation episodes, those are the ones that are separated by dire portents, orc assault, or what was the other one? Terrors of the Dark, or Gosh, which is like the Balrog. There also is in the core book like this example of how to generate these Revelation episodes. So like, it's awesome that Moria has those available, right? Like just being able to roll on a table, that's really cool. But also it's awesome that there is like some instruction on how to create such Revelation episodes. on your own, because I think, again, that's what I want here. I want some things set and some things improvised. And I think that's paradise for solo players to have the option of either of those things. Let me just show something not in the solo section, but is definitely going to be a bookmark you want to have. All right, so take a look at the map, right? The map, some things are numbered, but okay, that's number 24 right there, if you could see it. Around number 24, there's a room that is an offshoot. There's a room that's an offshoot. Here's one that's unnumbered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are in like a honeycomb shape. Any of these terminuses that are unnumbered, that's for you to create something. But remember how I said that there was this little, in each location, it would say whether it's obscure or famous or whatever. What's great about this is based on that, if you do want to incorporate like the set locations, right? If you do want to say, well, I want to do a traditional, dungeon delve here, and I want to use the maps of each area, but how do I do that? If it's solo play, I don't want to randomly generate everything. Fine, cool. If something is famous, then don't mess with it. But if it's hidden, then you have like a little bit more latitude. It could be more based on the rumor, right? Maybe people don't remember it correctly. And so you can still use the generator tools, but then read through that section as well to have some inspiration on what is the purpose of it, what's the history of it. And from there, you customize it so that it's still emergent and surprising and randomized. But then for all of those other rooms, you are going to want to roll them up. And so again, this is this chamber generator, and it's got tables that you're going to move along in order. Chamber type, condition, appearance, and challenge, if there is one. And then going right to the next section of the orc band generator, if your challenge is a martial encounter, you go right to here and roll that up, and then you go right into the bestiary to discover what the nature of that is. Okay. So it's almost to the point that if I am solo playing, I'm going to want this section right here photocopied and next to me. All right, feast your eyes on that while I talk a little bit, just to cover a couple other awesome things. So besides the calling, right, which could be for you and your group could have a separate one, each of the allies is going to have their own gifts, right? And so there's a table right off the bat when you're assembling your allies. Are they a healer, a stone seer, a deadeye, courteous, watchful? Are they a musician? And then from there, you can also determine, and by the way, there's a lot of options here. It's not just like archetypes. There is, let's see, 36 different gifts. And then there's quirks, which are mostly going to be narrative, but we want to bring those up when things get frustrated. Names, obviously. And when you're planning a mission, you can set the objective on your own, but there's also a way, 24 different like predetermined missions that will have different compositions. Each of these you can randomize, or you can choose directly based on what your mission is. All right. That will affect your eye awareness. And so if you do more than one delve like per session, you can have more, you can reset that eye awareness every time you go in there, which will change the hunt threshold. Now, again, Moria, all of it is a darkland, but they do say if it's a little bit difficult, you could say the areas that are really deep and unknown are more darklands, which would have a hunt threshold of 14. But you can consider the places that are more secure and known to be like the same as a wildland of 16. And dependent on your fellowship phase, besides that being a fertile ground for narrative stuff, that's also the time you're able to take to rest can affect your hunt threshold. Okay. Instead of the traditional in group gameplay, you're going to have these different guide, scout, lookout, and hunter. And really, like, you might think that the natural thing to do would be to reassign your allies, which they're not NPCs, they're like PCs, but the P is lowercase. But again, it's going to be more abstracted, right? So part of the solo supplement that I really like is the way that it's organized. It's organized as, like, you know, obviously character creation, getting the band creation, and then for each mission, you're going to plan the mission, but then you're also going to have like different types of encounters. There's going to be different types of events, but you would think, what I was saying is, you would think that, okay, now I have some allies, I can put them into those roles. We're still going to abstract that. And the choice, I think, of that is smart, not because I think it's a place where you balance like fidelity to the text of the core game versus the player experience and enjoyment of solo play. So yes, like, we could de-abstract that into making these different roles. I think it might be a little bit different because it's not Overland, but instead, let's just keep it in the same sort of solo rules. And if something comes up, we have a skill test. We can use the group's skill as if they're almost a player character of their own. And as it says on the right side here, when you're playing as part of a company with a lore master, you would normally have limited knowledge of your destination. But as a solo player, you have to balance the information needed to manage the journey with the viewpoint. So to imagine your wanderings, use the tools, and they have, just like in Strider mode, a gorgeous amount of tools for this. It is unbelievable, just like the lore tables and stuff. But on top of that, you also, and I'll show you one of these, this events tables, right? After you're doing your, when you do your marching tests, whenever you want to journey, depending on like the distance of your objective. But then there's these event details, right? Pretty cool, right? You have these 6 event details. Dude, there are 6 of these tables that are different like brands of events. So you look at these events, it's going to show you how to determine the outcome of that. But then within that, you use the lore table to build that event. I mean, this is like peak solo play here. This is so great. I mean, this is like exactly the right amount of surprise and structure here. Okay. And just the fact that it's organized the way that it is so helpful. I mean, just look at the table of contents here, right? This is the solo play, starts right here. Okay. So yes, all of this on this column right here is all going to be before, but then every time you sit down to solo play, 199, planning a mission. All right. Which of you are coming with me? What's our mission objective? What are we doing? What kind of allies am I going to need for that? Who's ready to go? Who needs more time to recover? Who is like having like not a good time and needs to stay back, right? Put that together, figure out based on the strength of that, what your target numbers are, your eye awareness score, your hunt threshold, and then you take off. Okay, we're on the mission. 202, exploring. It's going to talk about making rolls, like using your target number for the different ally specific skills. How to determine like who rolls. Is it a player character roll? Is it an ally roll? Which skill are you going to use? Something on adjusting burden, which is like a shared encumbrance through the group. Weariness, managing hope, shadow, managing eye awareness, reclaiming treasures. So that is basically everything you need to know. Like as you leave your safe haven and go on your trip, your intended destination is going to be mapped out in advance. That doesn't mean you can't change it. That doesn't mean that the floor can't break and suddenly you don't know where the hell you are. But once you have that, structure set up, within that, that is that avoids the hollow heebie-jeebies, because you're like, I know what I'm doing, or I know at least what I'm trying to do here. Okay. But there's more. There's more. I can't, how is there more? Well, there is specific rules on battles in solo play, on journeying, on councils. And if you don't know, in the One Ring, like I might have said this, but like councils, everything is that all has some mechanics to it as well. The fellowship phase as well. So this right here, think about this, and let's not even name names. There are solo guides that are 100 pages and don't tell you much. And then there are solo guides that are 500 pages and maybe they tell you too much. And maybe that makes it so that you pick that book up and you go, I can't do this. This is too much. But right here, we have 36 pages that rests atop a system that it's not like, if you picked up a game and it was called like the Revenge of the Dutch or something, or New Jersey, the game, you might be like, I don't really feel like learning this system. Why would I learn this system? Why would I take up my brain space? But this is a game that, even if you're a solo player that plays with groups, is a great system to learn. And it's a good system, right? And so it's worth that time. And then with these tools, you're just going to have a hell of a time. I think it's worth it. Now, is every bit of it worth it? I don't know. And honestly, this is a part where I truly don't know. I would need to play this out. And I'm curious if anyone in the comments has done this, but there is instructions for a clash. Now, this is something that I'm encountering in Pendragon as well. I know that others who play games that have both like individual combat and large scale combat, different systems do this better or worse, depending. But this is a way that you can have a combat. Let's have a combat. You can have a combat that you don't need to resolve every single thing that happens. And so I'm not going to explain this. I would do it horribly. But essentially, you're doing work in advance and then pressing play is the best way to think of it. You're trying to figure out, what's the objective? What are the things that you want to do in this combat? We want to take down this guy. We want to capture this guy. We want to push them back against this wall. You're going to try to sum up all of those things, add in your advantages, take away your disadvantages, figure out how big the other team is. Take all of these factors and you're going to come up with some numbers that then you can then use to like actually do the transactions of the combat. That said, along the way, there are clash complications, interruptions. I'm not sure, but they're basically things that turn the tide on the best laid plan. So it's not like you're going to create all these numbers and then like roll and be like, wow, that was fun. And just imagine the sound of like a bunch of swords hitting each other. That's not how it goes. It's a way of abstracting a larger combat. They also include some rules for like, if you want to zoom the camera in and go with a duel, especially with your player character, especially if there's an arch foe, somebody who it's like a really critical moment, you can still do combat 1-to-1 that way. But if you're facing 40 of something, you probably don't want to deal with like 46 initiative rolls, right? Same way for councils, for journeying, for fellowship. Everything in this version of it is going to be, the tools are going to help you have a robust, unique experience, but not so that you get dragged down, so that you can have the benefit of having a group of allies that expand your capabilities as a solo player. And honestly, don't stretch your imagination as much, because in some games, especially converted like group RPG games that are converted into solo plays, it can stretch the imagination sometimes, right? Where you're like, how is my one person doing this thing that normally takes 5 of us with all different skills and items and talents and stuff, right? So it makes more sense. And I would say the way that it makes sense is it treats your allies as almost a character made up of several different characters. And they're all sort of like plugging the USB drive of what they are into one computer that is then spitting out a result for that, if that makes sense. Fellowship phase is especially interesting in that you can recover for a few hours, for days, for weeks. If you recover for weeks, you get advantages. Everyone's healed up, but it's going to lower the hunt threshold. You're taking more time. That's allowing the snarling jerks of the deep to grow in strength, and so you need to consider that. And all told, there are a lot of meaningful choices here, and that I think. Oh my God, I'm almost at 2 hours. That I think is where I really want to, how I want to frame my overall impressions of this. Just on the front end, you know. Again, I really do take it to heart that you can't really know how this is without playing it. Cue the guy who's like, well, why didn't you just play it? Because I want you to make that video. I want you to make the thousands and thousands of dollars you're going to get from making that video. But seriously, I mean, honestly, if I really do have to take some time to pick and choose like what I do a playthrough of. I'm not super good at it. I mean, I think I'm good at the improvisational parts, but it's like remembering the mechanics. I just don't want to confuse people. And so when I do solo play on camera, I take like a little extra time to prepare. I tried to get away with not doing that early on in my channel, and it was just very, I think it was like a bit of a disservice because it could have been quite confusing to people, because some people look at solo play videos to, you know, just to enjoy them. And some of them are like, I need to see how this works and how this looks. And so if I do solo play something, as we see with Pendragon Forbidden Lands, I really do invest in it. It's important to me. And so that's a different kind of video. Okay. But here's what I have to say about this. I think I've said most of this. So as you are adapting a game that is not made for solo play into solo play, you have a lot of choices to make. And I think that I forget if it was a video or it was a video where I was talking about mega dungeons, and I talked a lot about how do you make this mechanic so that it basically has the same outcome or has the same effect as it would in group play. And I got some comments that were like, well, it's not group play, right? It's not, it's different. I don't want it to be group play. And it's like, I get that. I totally understand that and pay heed. I'm not saying you need to perfectly replicate it. You don't have to mathematically replicate it so that it's the same or that it functions exactly the same. It has to produce the same effect, whether that effect is enjoyment, frustration, urgency. And so it's hard. It's hard to figure out when you put it all together, what is going to be the net effect for the end user or the player, right? But I do really think there is, if you have a dungeon delving itch, I think that my original hesitations about this game, and my original hesitations were sort of obtuse. I was kind of like, well, I want a mega dungeon. I want a book that's 900 pages and has 1,200 different entries. That is very cool. And I think I have some games on the way that are going to accomplish that. But if we're talking about rather than just sort of satisfying some deranged motivation that I have for the next, 10 days and it'll go away. If we're talking about a extremely complete and fulfilling and unique, memorable experience, I think this is it. What I am interested in and what I need to know more about, if any of you have experienced this, is the one thing that I do think about is, does it get too mechanized? Now, again, I'm still a little, I don't know why I'm so sensitive to critiques of the One Ring, or especially when they're cased as like why D&D is better. But, you know, the assertion with the One Ring that I heard was like, oh, it's a game that was made by like a board game designer. So it works like a board game. And I'm really not seeing that. And I don't really, that like really, like that's, I'm not going to take it to court, but I feel that's like slanderous. Why would somebody say that? I don't understand that. And maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe I'm not seeing something. But I think that this game makes a wonderful opportunity to go beyond mechanics, right? Having the opportunity to play out council meetings and having the opportunity to really invest in the time that's around the campfire and stuff like that. But when I read something in this, it made me a little bit nervous. And it's really weird because it's this thing that comes up in solo play. In a lot of solo play guides, you know how there's like things that you have to do your genuflecting before the solo play altar, or even in any game where it's like, hey, these are rulings, not rules, or like, hey, you know, it's up to you what kind of experience you want to have. Hey, it's like, yeah, we know, but like you still have to put that stuff in there because it's important. You know, you have to show that by creating this guide, you don't want to limit the person's creativity. And if they want to do something with the game, they can do something with the game. That said, there is this thing that when it's said in a solo game, I get nervous. And I'm trying to find this right now. But essentially, let me bring it up. Okay, yeah, so I found it. So this is like, I'm trying to think of a metaphor for this. It would be if I was like driving, sitting in the back seat and just kind of zoning out. Nobody's talking. It's some road trip. And then all of a sudden the driver or the person in the passenger seat up front turns around and goes, you know, 99.9% of the time, people do not fall in massive sinkholes that suddenly appear out here. I'd be like, I'm sorry, what? Right? It's like, no, I'm trying to reassure you. Like, people usually don't. It's very rare. And I'm like, but why'd you say that? It's like, oh, I'm just saying. And it's like, is there something behind this that's making somebody say this, or are they just saying it? And what I'm referring to is any sort of box that is some version of this. Now, this one is more specific, and actually I have more faith in the genuine, authentic delivery of this, but it's like, anytime that it's like, hey, if you want, you can keep a journal. That's cool, right? You can keep a journal. What I worry about with that now, I think this is like based on something from the lore, like the Book of Mazarbul, which is this actual chronicle. And I think in any solo play, even if it's just bulleted, I like that they said that it could be brief and bulleted, so you don't run people off with this fear that they're going to have to write a 196 page like moleskin just to play. And I like that. So that's not what I'm afraid of. What I'm looking at when I read is like, when there are those moments that are narrative, when you're in a council, when you're in the fellowship phase, as the player, are you going to feel called to role play? Or are you going to be not called? Are you just going, is it going to be easier to abstract that? Because for me, I am the picky solo player. I'm the one that does not just want point crawl. I do not just want to like roll dice, gained points, roll dice, lost points, roll dice. Like, I don't want that. And I also don't want what was happened in my early experience with solo playing, where it's like, okay, I've started out on my quest. To my left is roll dice, a postal service worker. And what do they want? Oh, they want to tell me about their grandchildren. Okay. And then 3 hours later, I'm like, all right, well, I'm done with that encounter with the mailman. And then you're like, boy, I'm tired. Because that is a risk with some games, especially games that I feel like are based on moves or the powered by the apocalypse system, unless you have a good control over how much is enough, which this video is at 1 hour and 58 minutes. So I'm clearly not that type of person. But I want it there's certain games that when you're playing them, it feels right. It feels like to get the full experience of this game, it is important to do more than just roll dice and mark the effects of them. And so this is what I'm curious about. And if anyone has soloed this, like, do you still think about what they're talking about sitting around the fire, or are you just seeing like how much fellowship has occurred? Are you having narrative moments when there are, mishaps or ill fortune, or when the gaze of the eye increases? Is that making you more nervous, or is that just a mechanical effect that like you're trying to race against? I don't know. I definitely could see it both ways, but I'm just really high on the supply of I forget who it is now. The video I was watching that was like, you just cannot know a game until you played it. It's totally different. It might have been, I don't know. I'll look for it. But what are your thoughts? In my mind, this is like really something here. This is something new. This is something good. And it's so nice to see intentional, well thought out solo mechanics at the end of a guide. But what are your thoughts? You already know. Just talk to me. I want to hear from you, the people, because as I say, in solo gaming, you must talk. And what? In solo gaming, you must talk? I've never said that. 2 hours. People are going to be asking for a refund. 2 hours. Oh,